The failure to act with sufficient ambition to avert the climate catastrophe will be the greatest moral failure of our time.
Making changes takes courage, and if we don't change things, we won't have a future.
We need a president who respects science, who understands that the damage from climate change is already here.
You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. Change is coming, whether you like it or not.
Zero Carbon
Eastall.
Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista Series 2. It's the Manifesto. I'm Ian Collins, and for the rookies out there, this is the only podcast of its kind that will give you the real lowdown on all the major environmental stories alongside some honest and qualified opinion. Fair to say many have tried, few have succeeded. Our man with the wand of wisdom on each episode is Dale Vince. Dale, of course, the entrepreneur and environmentalist. He built his huge success in the green energy sector and is the owner of Ecotricity. Also, for the uninitiated, he's the owner of Forest Green Rovers. And on each episode, of course, we bring you the dominating issues from the biggest agenda on the planet right now, the environment and climate change. Morning, Dale.
Yeah, morning, Ian. Quite a bit to go through this week, I think, looking at what's happened in the world.
There is. But can we start with beavers?
Yeah, let's do that.
This is great. What's happening?
Well, Britain had its first wild beaver born in 400 years last week. And, I tend to think that the destruction we've wrought on the environment has really kind of coincided with the Industrial Revolution, call it 150 years ago or something like that. But 400 years ago, we killed off all of our beavers. We hunted them into extinction. And I do wonder what kind of country, that we were living in that long ago, 400 years. What did Britain really look like when we actually still had beavers in our countryside?
Yeah. They look like a lovely bit of kit, your beaver, but they'll take your throat out if you look them the wrong way, wouldn't they?
I have no idea if beavers attack people, but they're my kind of favorite kind of rewilding outcome. Really, I'm a fan of the red squirrel. Absolutely, I'm a big fan of rewilding. But the idea of being able to bring beavers back into our environment, for me, that's the most evocative, kind of idea that there is out there.
I love it. Where do you stand on wolves? Because there is an effort by some who want wolves to be back as well.
Safe distance, I want to say first. Stand at a safe distance.
They absolutely would have your face off.
But I'm up for it. I think the risk to the human population is really rather small. They tend to avoid people, and you can understand why. They're the predator in our ecosystem that we're missing. That's why deer are running wild in the Highlands, for example, and preventing trees from growing back.
True.
So it's a real problem that, we've unbalanced our environment. There are no predators in the environment now except humans.
But then we get into things like bears, don't we? Because didn't we used to have bears?
Yeah, definitely. But I don't see anything wrong with that either, We need more wildness in our country, We need wild areas where nature can do its thing.
We should just live in a zoo, really, shouldn't we?
We almost nearly do, I would say, live in a zoo.
Yeah, it's kind of human zoo. There's no doubt about that. It's a great story, though. The first beaver born in 400 years is huge news.
Yeah, it is. It is huge news, and it just makes me think. Kind of what have we done? And it was not as recent as the Industrial Revolution. We've been killing off nature for a long time, like Britain's rainforest. I often refer to our rainforest and how we've lost it already, destroyed it already. And I didn't realize until a few weeks ago that actually the British rainforest is a thing, a Celtic rainforest.
Wow.
So it's a temperate rainforest rather than a tropical one, and it exists at these latitudes all around the world. And it's more under threat than tropical rainforests. But they were kind of wiped out in the Bronze Age or something like that. Dartmoor used to be full of it. Dart is the ancient Celtic word for oak, and temperate rainforests are dominated by oak trees and all kinds of unique flora and fauna that you just don't see. There are very few patches left in Britain now, and we're going to, in the next few months, pull together a bit of a campaign to save some of these rainforest areas and grow them again, a kind of, saving Britain's rainforest campaign. But they're beautiful places. I should post some pictures on social media.
We really don't want to be losing any of that, of course, or any more of that. Hey, I saw this headline, which just kind of ties into something I think we probably mention every week at some point. But there is, I think, a need for clarity, not from us, but from maybe our political masters out there. The EU is pushing to become climate neutral by 2050. If I see another date, I'm going to go mad on this. We've got 2030 for this, 2026 for that, 2051 for something else. Can you see the confusion here, for lots of people? the danger with all of these headlines is that this can very soon just brush over people.
Well, yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I got 2050 fatigue actually because it's all you read about, and I think the story behind this headline is not a new target as such, because 2050 has been out there for a long time now. Hopefully, it's that they're doing something material about it, something significant. And the climate crisis, of course, has just roared up the agenda in Germany. I mean, they're having elections soon. And it's done so because of the extreme weather that's just happened in Europe, flooding in Germany, Switzerland, and Belgium that's killed like dozens of people.
Yeah.
Where they had, in one area of Germany, they had 2 months rain in 2 days, and nothing can cope with that. Everything breaks and goes wrong. Houses have been washed away and collapsed, and just mad scenes. And at the same time, on the other side of the Atlantic, America is being ravaged by wildfires up and down the West Coast. Kind of exceptional weather events of drought causing fires, and then the loss of trees is exacerbating that, in the next season, because the land is getting hotter as the vegetation cover gets less, which is caused by the burning. There's this vicious cycle of desertification of the west of America. It's really quite incredible.
Here's a question from John. He says, Dale, long-term listener from Geelong in Australia and former Ecotricity customer before we fled the country. How on earth can someone like me make the leaders here take climate change seriously? Do we have to stage a coup? I'm only being semi-serious, he says. I think the other day about the kind of real lack of the Aussie agenda in this respect.
Yeah, what can we say? Maybe we should say good day, Bruce, first. But, what do you do in a country like Australia to get the attention of some real kind of retrograde politicians, that just believe in continuing to coal mine and kind of live these incredibly high carbon lifestyles? I think it was you, Ian, that told me that the Australians have the highest per capita carbon footprint of any people in the world today.
Which is extraordinary.
So what do we do about that? I don't know.
For some strange reason, and this is clearly a misplaced view, but because Australia you associate with the outdoors and people being outside and the bush and the wildlife, you kind of have that sense that this is a place that looks after its outside. And clearly that is a completely bollocks opinion to have, because the politicians are not looking after their outside.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to understand how anybody can be so short-sighted. It's not like we're lacking any evidence or data that the climate crisis is here, that it's happening. It's happening big time in Australia, of course. They've had a series of huge disasters, dust storms, fires, temperatures, all kinds of problems over there. And I don't know why they don't get that and say, actually, this isn't right. This isn't normal for Australia.
Sure.
Maybe we should be doing something. But you've got to wonder if it's not just money that's talking over there. There's a huge part of the economy vested in fossil fuels and the old bad way of doing things. And, some people value money more than anything else. And this might be fundamentally the problem.
Yeah, you could be right. Let's come back to a domestic agenda here. We talk about food a lot because, of course, it's intrinsically linked with the whole environment, inseparable from the environmental agenda and where we need to be. And this announcement this week, or this release of a report, government commission report about food and how we get people healthier, but also how we get the planet healthier as well. It talked about sugar tax and salt taxation, prescribing vegetables, and fundamentally eating less meat.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a landmark report. They do recommend about a 3 billion tax on salt and sugar, which I think is quite exceptional. The reduction of animal consumption is only around about 30%, which I think is exceptionally low. But you've got to start somewhere, so hey ho. And you introduced it as a government-sponsored or commissioned report. It's really interesting because Johnson's response was to say, actually, it's an independent report and I'm going to read it, but I don't really want to add taxes to hardworking people for salt and sugar. So I think we know which way this one's going to go.
But wouldn't you just say to manufacturers, I mean, on the salt and sugar thing, you can't put that much salt and sugar into your pies and stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody was, if Aunt Bessie was putting cocaine in her Yorkshire puddings, there would be an uproar. People say, well, it's very bad for you, this stuff. Therefore, we don't think you should put it in your pies and your puddings. But salt and sugar, and we know that certainly with sugar, problems with that, and then the knock-on effects and obesity and all that goes with it. Surely it's a simple case of saying it would be illegal to put this amount of, crap in certain foods.
I mean, there are two ways to do it. as you point out, it would be simple enough to legislate and say the maximum amount of salt, sugar, and fat. By the way, the report seems to miss out fat because they're the three staples of highly processed food: salt, sugar, and fat. And they're in there because they're addictive and they shout at our taste buds. They drown everything else out. They make normal food like vegetables just taste boring, which is why kids don't like them. And it is wrong. It's addictive. It's intentional. It makes you come back to the same product, and it's an arms race, between those manufacturers of piling in salt, sugar, and fat to compete for market share. So yeah, we could legislate against it, or as the report recommends, we could put a tax on that stuff, so it just costs them more money to do that. I actually favour your suggested approach, because we could tax the stuff, and then they might reduce the amount that they put in, or they might not. They might just put the price up.
Well, we have rules around planning permission. We have rules about what you can build, but pretty much sod all about what goes into your gob, which is extraordinary. And yet simultaneously, we're always banging on about an obesity crisis. And of course, that's just one part of this pie chart, to coin a phrase, because there's the environmental side on this as well. It's interesting. We had a question from Ruth on Twitter. It says the National Food Strategy doesn't go far enough. Where's the focus on veganism for the planet? I don't think that was mentioned.
No, I agree. And if you look at the agriculture and the food industry lobby, and you look at the fossil fuel lobby, they're incredibly powerful business lobbies, and they do seem almost unregulated. The fossil fuel guys can dump stuff into the atmosphere. They don't pay for that. We pay for that, and they're killing us with it. And the same with the food industry and the agriculture industry. Where are the regulations for that? They're minimal, and we need more. We need to do better.
Yeah. Talking of things that people do that they shouldn't do, water company continues to pump raw sewage into the sea after a £90 million fine. I mean, does that mean companies don't give a hoot about a fine?
They certainly don't give a hoot about regulations in the water industry, because this is the story, I think, of Southern Water. And for years, they were deliberately dumping sewage into holding tanks, waiting for the next time it rained, and then just dumping it into the sea. They had the sewage treatment plants running permanently at 50% capacity so that they could save money. And they got caught, and they were fined 90 million quid. It sounds like a lot of money, but they make about 250 million quid a year. I think they should have lost a year's profit at least. Yeah. Otherwise, it doesn't put them off. They've been doing it for years. They were affecting the coastal fishing industry, bumping off mussels and stuff like that. With this vile pollution that we're just dumping into our sea. I mean,
this is what companies do, isn't it? I mean, where I live, in fact, kind of the end of my garden, really, which was this lovely sort of verdant expanse of trees and bushes. Then a couple of years ago, some character comes along and says, I think we can build 2 houses there. Okay, there's quite a lot of trees around. And so they did a little, the council did a bit of a recce on it, and they said, yeah, you can build 2 houses. This is an area that doesn't need 2 massive houses, by the way. Lego kind of houses. And they said you can do, but you can't cut down. You can only work within this framework. So you can't cut down those trees there because they're all protected. There were about 20 of these trees. So the company cut down the trees and then got fined, 600 quid a tree. And they didn't give a shit because they're selling the houses for 1.5 million.
Yeah. I mean,
so it's worth breaking the law, because the profit is still there. It doesn't even touch the sides.
Yeah, it comes back to that same basic point I was making about Australia. Some people put money before anything else. And then, of course, when that happens, we need the law to prevent that, like the law on processed food, for example, the law to protect protected trees properly, to make it properly painful to cut down a protected tree, not just an expense, Can't
we just shoot the boss if this happens, like kind of Wild West style? If you pollute again, we will shoot you. That would stop.
Yeah, a bit drastic. That. I mean, I think we could do a lot better before going that far. We could take Southern Water back into public ownership.
Take their water off you.
There's a proper threat. Let's have it back in public ownership. Let's run it properly in the public interest.
Yeah. Indeed. This from Ed on Twitter. Great result for Forest Green against Melksham. Any more players signing before the season? Tell us more, Dale.
Yeah, no, we're done in terms of player signings. We like the squad that we've got, and Melksham was a great game. Lovely people up there. That was Tuesday this week, and it was 6-0 Forest Green. You expect to win because it's a team 3 leagues below us, but it's not about the win. It's about how we play. And for both teams, it's a chance to warm up for the season. So it was a good game, competitive, fun to watch. Good to see our new players on the pitch. This is what pre-season's all about.
That must be a great moment as somebody whose club it is to go, right, we've invested here. We've looked at, what we think we can improve on, and we've got these new players to actually see all of that manifest on a football pitch and see what you've got now for the next season. That's a moment, right?
Yes, pre-season is always exciting for fans, I would say. And in our case, this pre-season, we're also taking a look at our new head coach and assistant coach and seeing what they've got. And that's looking pretty exciting as well, in terms of the tactical approach to the game.
Now, here's a story about our coastline. We were talking about the beauty of this country. Have you ever seen that program Coast, where they just go around the UK looking at different, essentially the entire perimeter of our country, and you just don't give credit for the outstanding beauty of this place. It's just phenomenal. It's just breathtaking when you see what we have there. And I was disturbed to read the story that areas of Wales are sleepwalking into oblivion because of coastal erosion. Now, coastal erosion is a thing. It's not new, but sleepwalking into oblivion, that's quite a dramatic headline.
That's a dramatic headline. The thing that shocked me more in world news is the news that the Amazon is now producing 1 billion tons of CO2 a year. It stopped being a net absorber some years ago. This is a result of a 10-year study flying airplanes at 4,500 feet over the same spot for 10 years. And the Amazon is producing more CO2 than it absorbs, which is a scary place because since the 60s, rainforests and places like the Amazon have absorbed a quarter of all carbon emissions from the fossil fuels we've been burning. We've been taking it for granted that that's been happening. It's not happening anymore. And it's not just about the fires that are being set deliberately for animal farming, but there's a kind of negative loop of less trees in certain areas of the Amazon leads to less rain, which leads to more natural burning as well. There's this same kind of thing that's happening in America, this kind of negative feedback loop, really.
Finally, a question from Fiona, who says, Dale, really enjoyed your live chats on Facebook earlier this year. Are there plans for any more?
I'm not aware of any, but I enjoy them as well. So, if we can squeeze some in, we will, definitely.
We did one, didn't we, as well? We did one together.
Yeah, we did, yeah. We should do another one.
I think I was in my neighbour's shed. Do you remember? I had a power cut.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
That's right.
We're having a chat with the boss of an energy company, and I had a power cut. Nothing to do with ecotricity, actually.
No, I'm sure he wasn't our customer.
Yeah, absolutely. But the next door neighbour didn't have a power cut, which confused everybody. So we think he might have been behind it out there with a spade, cutting something he shouldn't have cut. But yeah, they were fun to do. And watch this space, I guess, is the message.
Definitely. I'm up for it.
Good work. Dale, we'll speak next week.
Yeah, nice one. See you, Ian.
Have a good one. That's it for this episode. Don't forget, of course, to follow the podcast from your podcast provider so that you get each new episode automatically. Do leave a review there as well. If you want to get in touch, you can email zerocarbonista@ecotricity.co.uk. Really important bit, of course, is to follow Dale on social media. That's twitter.com/DaleVince, facebook.com/DaleVince.
Zero Carbon
East of